The one truth about the economy that everyone running things hopes you never realize is this: a controlled economic crash is the only thing that can stop a fatal global collapse. The good times have gone on for too long, and we are now trapped in a vicious debt cycle that demands a brutal reset. Right now, the world, all of us, are in debt for a shocking $315 trillion. That is a number so big it stops feeling real. It's what governments, companies, and regular people owe each other. Think of it this way: the entire planet's economy, everything we make in a year, our total GDP, is worth less than what we currently owe. This debt is the reason your money feels worthless, the reason everything costs so much, and the reason why the global economy is balanced on the sharp edge of a knife. The core problem is that we've forgotten how to let things fail, and because of that, a recession, a major, painful recession, is no longer a threat. It is the necessary cure. Let's talk about the single most important challenge facing the modern economy. We used to have cycles, right? A boom followed by a bust. The bust was horrible, yes, but it served a purpose. It was like a forest fire that cleared out all the old, dead wood so new, strong trees could grow. Economists have a slightly fancier name for this: creative destruction. The crash was the destruction part, wiping out bad ideas, inefficient companies, and overvalued investments. The creative part came next, where all the money, talent, and resources that were tied up in those doomed projects got freed up and moved into better, smarter, more productive areas. It's a painful but vital system for a healthy, growing economy. But over the last few decades, we got scared of the pain. Every time a crisis loomed, central banks and governments rushed in with massive amounts of cheap money, low interest rates, and bailouts. We developed a sophisticated system designed to smooth out every single bump. We made it our mission to avoid the bust at all costs. The result? We stopped the destruction part of the cycle. We saved almost everything, even the businesses that should have died. Now, we are completely jammed up. We have an economy clogged with what are called zombie companies. These are businesses that don't make enough money to even cover their interest payments on their debt. They're not productive, they're not innovating, but because money has been so cheap for so long, they can just keep borrowing to stay alive. They don't grow. They just suck up resources, money, smart employees, office space that could be going to new, healthy businesses that actually have good ideas and can generate real wealth. This is why the $315 trillion debt figure is so fatal. It's not just a big number. It's a symptom of a system where failure is no longer allowed. Every dollar that is propping up a zombie company is a dollar that can fund the next great startup. Every talented engineer stuck at a doomed business is an engineer who can invent the next technology that truly changes things. The economy is stuck, not because we lack potential, but because we lack the brutal willingness to purge the bad ideas. Think back to the dot-com bubble collapse in the late 1990s and early 2000s. You had countless companies with ridiculous names and zero business models raising billions of dollars. People were throwing money at anything with a com at the end of it. It was completely out of control. When the crash came, it was a sudden, violent shock. The stock market took a massive hit, and thousands of those overvalued, pointless companies were completely wiped out. People lost a lot of money, and it was a serious downturn. But that crash, that moment of destruction, did something crucial. It freed up the capital and the engineers. It forced investors to look for real business models, real value, and real profits. What followed the collapse? The rise of the actual giants of the modern internet era. The companies that survived and the ones that were founded in the wreckage were built on stronger foundations. The pain of the dot-com crash paved the way for the incredible technological progress and wealth creation that defined the next 2 decades. It was a perfect, though painful, example of creative destruction at work. Now, compare that to the 2008 financial crisis. This was a truly catastrophic moment. The entire banking system, the bedrock of the global economy, was on the brink of complete fatal collapse. The crisis was triggered by people borrowing way too much money to buy houses they couldn't afford, all packaged up into complex toxic debt products. When the system began to seize up, governments and central banks around the world panicked. And rightfully so, the scale of the danger was unprecedented. But instead of letting the full force of creative destruction run its course, they engaged in massive, immediate bailouts. Trillions of dollars were pumped into banks, insurance companies, and even car manufacturers. The goal was to prevent a total economic depression, which was a good and necessary thing to do in the short term. But here is where the problem started. We saved the system, but we didn't clean it. The institutions that created the crisis were rescued, and many of the people responsible faced no real consequences. More importantly, the misallocation of capital, the root cause of the crisis, was never fully corrected. We didn't solve the structural issues. We just put a massive financial band-aid on them. This created a sense that certain institutions are too big to fail, which encourages even riskier behavior. It taught the economy that no matter how reckless the borrowing and investment, the government will step in to save the day. This refusal to let the economy correct itself is what has led us to the $315 trillion debt monster we face today. Every time we avoid the pain of a recession, we just add more water to the debt balloon, making the inevitable pop even bigger and more catastrophic. The current global economy is essentially a bubble built on cheap money and the expectation that debt will never have to be repaid because the music will never stop. Let's look at the actual mechanics of this current debt crisis. When the debt is this high, two major things happen that make the situation completely doomed. First, interest payments are fatal. When you owe $315 trillion, even a small increase in interest rates has a devastating effect. If a government or a company has to spend all its money just paying the interest on its debt, it has no money left to invest in the future, no money for new roads, new factories, or new research. This slows growth to a crawl. The debt itself becomes a dead weight, stopping any real momentum. It is a slow, structural collapse. Second, capital is misallocated. We touched on the zombie companies, but this goes much deeper. In a world awash with cheap money, investment decisions stop being rational. People don't put money into the things that create lasting value. They put it into things that look like they'll get a quick, easy return like speculative assets, meme stocks, or non-productive real estate deals. If you can borrow money for almost nothing, you don't care about the risk. You only care about the potential massive gain. This is why we see so much investment in projects that don't to actually make society richer or more productive. The economy is full of fat-bloated, inefficient, and reliant on cheap credit. And like a person with high blood pressure, any small shock can be fatal. This brings us to the present moment and the talk of trade wars and geopolitical tensions. Many of the tariffs and restrictions being discussed, particularly between major global powers, are essentially economic attacks. They disrupt supply chains, make goods more expensive, and introduce massive, paralyzing uncertainty for businesses. A business will not build a new factory or hire 1,000 new people if it doesn't know what the rules of trade will be next year. They freeze. This uncertainty is a trigger. It acts like a massive bucket of cold water on the global economic party. It is slowing down trade and production, and that slowdown is exactly what a recession is. It forces businesses to reevaluate where they are spending their money. It forces investors to ask, is this business model still viable if cheap global shipping is no longer guaranteed? Can this company survive if I can't borrow money for almost nothing? The controversial but compelling thesis is that this painful slowdown, this induced crisis, is the only way to stop the debt monster from exploding in an even worse way. We are facing a choice between a slow, painful, corrective recession or a sudden, global, debt-fueled depression that is completely uncontrollable. A recession would force the long-overdue creative destruction. The zombie companies would finally go bankrupt. Their employees, resources, and capital would be released and immediately start flowing to more productive companies that are making essential goods, providing necessary services, and innovating in areas where the world truly needs it. It would be a brutal, agonizing period for many, with layoffs and economic worry, but it would be the process of squeezing the fat out of the system. It would be a painful but vital shift back towards an economy based on real value and real profit, not on endless, unsustainable debt. The climax of this whole situation is simple. We are at the point of no return. We can either continue to kick the $315 trillion can down the road, making the ultimate crash worse and worse, or we can embrace a severe but necessary recession now to fix the structural flaws. Every single decision being made by governments and central banks right now is a decision about which fatal outcome they prefer. They are trying to orchestrate a soft landing, a gentle slowdown, but the sheer weight of the debt and the level of misallocation suggests that a soft landing is just a fairy tale. The system is too clogged for a gentle process. It needs a significant, deep, and painful cleanout. We have reached a point where the debt-ridden system has become so fundamentally flawed that the cure is the very thing we've been trying to avoid for 20 years. A recession is not coming to hurt us. It is coming because we desperately need it to clear the way for real growth in the future. The system is doomed to failure without this correction. We have to choose the lesser of two evils, and that lesser evil is a period of deep cleansing and necessary economic contraction. The alternative is watching that mountain of $315 trillion debt finally crush the entire global financial structure under its immense, fatal weight. This process of correction will be defined by the failure of bad ideas, but that failure is the single most important precondition for the success of good ideas. If you found this breakdown of the global debt crisis and the need for a reset helpful, subscribe to the channel now.